All right, Alon, I'm really happy to have you back on Seriously Podcast. It's been about a year now, and of course, whenever I talk to you, we don't really talk about happy things. It's always genocide and murder and mass murder and stuff like that. But why don't we start on kind of like a little good note that you've shared with me that there's a growing number of Israelis now, you claim, not supporting the genocide. And I have also seen from some of your posts and from your episodes that the amount of protests have actually in the occupied Palestine increased a little bit. So can you say something about that?
Hi, and happy to be here as well. But I'm going to disappoint you once again. Because I don't like being cynical or being negative. It's the world that's cynical and negative, and I do like being honest. And honestly, I don't know about this new shift. There is a shift, definitely. Definitely, it is true that a certain group within the Zionist cult, within Jewish Israeli society, whatever you want to call it, is now speaking up more against the genocide that is ongoing in Gaza. That is specifically the group of liberal Zionists, and even more specifically, the ones who call themselves left-leaning liberal Zionists, even though I don't agree that they are in any way connected to the political idea called the left. So they are speaking up more against. Some of them do call it a genocide already. Some of them don't call it a genocide. But they are speaking up more against the starvation, against mass killing. They always make sure that they mention the Israeli hostages held in Gaza, and they always make sure that they mention the soldiers, the Israeli soldiers who are in Gaza, to make it very, very clear that they're not against the cult. God forbid, they're not going against the cult.
Okay.
But the question is, why are they speaking up against the genocide? What it means, and if this shift that we see on a superficial level is something meaningful on a deeper level, and does it represent true political change, and will it drive true political change? And this is where I have to be pessimistic and negative, and I think that the answer is a resounding no.
Okay. So then are you saying that we can believe the kind of polls that we've seen from the Harpaz paper recently, that according to an Israeli poll made by and published in Haaretz, that 47% of the Jewish population within Israel wants the genocide to continue and wants these people to be murdered? So
that is one piece of data from the recent poll, and another piece of data, which I find even more worrying, is that 82% of Jewish Israeli society supports either complete ethnic cleansing or complete destruction of all inhabitants of Gaza. And a majority, if I recall correctly, like 56%, also support forceful ethnic cleansing of the Arab population of Israel, that is 48 Palestinians. They also support expelling them.
What we call Arab Israelis.
Yes, they call it Arab Israelis. I prefer to call them 48 Palestinians because I believe that this is a more historically and politically accurate terminology.
Yeah, and those are the ones that already have an Israeli passport.
They have Israeli citizenship, and they are Israeli citizens. But there is a lot to be said about their position within the Zionist project, the ethnically layered Zionist project that where there are different groups of people who are divided according to ethnic, economic, historical, geographical conditions, and this creates a layering within the 15 million inhabitants who are living between the river and the sea, the region called Palestine, where I was born, the land where I was born, and the land where I am right now. I am right now in the occupied Palestinian city.
Yes, and you're still
Haifa.
alive.
Still alive.
Still smiling and still working hard.
Trying. But so the results of this poll, I was curious about them a few days ago because, I heard it and a lot of people quoted it and I was curious about it. So I tried to find some articles about it. And the first article that I found was an article in Haaretz newspaper. Haaretz, by the way, means the land, okay? Haaretz newspaper, they mean the land of Israel. They don't mean the land of Palestine. For them, the land is called differently. They are liberal Zionists, okay? Haaretz is a liberal Zionist newspaper.
And Gideon Levy is still there as a journalist, right?
Okay, so Gideon Levy, I am not sure if he is a crypto Zionist or not. I know that I don't know if he ever defined himself as anti-Zionist. He definitely does support the struggle of liberation of the Palestinian people. But sometimes you read his articles and you're like, is this guy a Zionist? Like he uses talking points which are too close to the liberal Zionist talking points, and I just don't know. But in any case, it doesn't, even if Gideon Levy is an anti-Zionist writing in Haaretz, it doesn't mean that Haaretz is not a liberal Zionist newspaper. They can, have token anti-Zionist voices, which they do. They do have token anti-Zionist voices, which serve the general liberal Zionist agenda. And the first article that I found went into it, and it said, maybe the results of this poll are not what you think. Maybe they're not as horrible as you think. Maybe there's some problems with the polling. Maybe it represents other things that, deep processes that are not as horrible. And I read it, and it made me question the poll. They criticized the poll. For instance, they said that the poll had a bias in the way that they sampled the population, a bias that made the percentage of support go up in the results. They also said that one of the problems, the methodological problems with this poll, was that they didn't give an option of I don't know or I'm undecided. And then they explained all kinds of reasons for why this number can be high, even though the problem is not so severe. So I read this and I was like, okay, it makes me doubt the poll a little bit. But I also had the inkling that this was an article that was part of apologetics for how deranged Jewish Israeli society is, because I have a sense of smell by now that recognizes this stench of apologetics for the Zionist cult. And then I looked more, and I found another article. I think it was someone referred to it in the comments on the first article. And this article was written by a professional poll maker. I don't know what the term for this is, and she's an academic, and she explained about the poll, and she said, I looked into it very, very deeply, and I think the poll does represent the general opinion within Jewish Israeli society. She is a person who I don't remember her name. I don't remember all the details. Maybe you can put links to the articles after. But she her job is to do polls about political opinions within Israeli society and Palestinian society. So she said this represents what I know, and she addressed directly all the criticism that was raised in the previous article. She said, yes, every single poll has a bias towards a different population, but there are statistical methods to accommodate this bias, to weight the result accordingly, and they did that, well. And the choice to not give an option of I don't know or I'm undecided is a conscious choice and a legitimate choice. Sometimes, so you have two different forms of polls. One of them gives you a choice of I don't know, and another doesn't give you, it forces you to choose. Okay?
Right.
And forcing people to choose also reveals something. You can say that you prefer the ones who the polls who have the option of I don't know. You can say this, but you can't say that it's illegitimate to force people to choose. And I think that it's still interesting that when forced to choose, 82% of Jewish Israelis chose to support expulsion and or extermination of the entire population of Gaza. It's like the argument, the apologetic argument, sounds to me like, well, you forced us to choose between ethnic cleansing and no ethnic cleansing. So what were we supposed to do? We chose ethnic cleansing. I don't buy that. And it is my experience as someone who has lived in the Zionist cult, what I call the Zionist cult, what can be called, if you don't like this expression, it can be called Jewish Israeli society. I lived in this society all my life. I know this society, and I know the shift that happened after October 7th, and I know how genocidal this society used to be, and I know how genocidal this society is now, and those results do not surprise me at all. And I think that this is very important, that we acknowledge the reality that 7 million or 8 million people living here, Jewish Israelis, so-called Jewish Israelis, have these opinions. You can explain why they have these opinions. You can say that they're not inherently bad people, which is something that I believe. I believe no one is inherently bad. I don't believe that there is something unique, essentially unique about these people, about these their genetics or their culture or whatever. I think that they are in a certain situation, political situation, that encourages such opinions. And I think that opinions and actions, it's not just opinions, they are doing it as well.
And that's something that's been latent in the Israeli society way before October 7th, I'm assuming. So this is nothing new. But I want to ask you, before October 7th, and I guess right after, it was very difficult to online call it a Zionist cult, because if you did that, being a Westerner, then you're an anti-Semite. Then you just support the killing the killing of Jews, and which is of course an abhorrent interpretation of that. But now it's okay actually to say a Zionist cult. It's much easier now online to say this, because people have started to realize that to be a Zionist and to be part of a Zionist cult, a lot of Jewish people are definitely not, and we're hearing a lot of these voices all around the world. Thank God, but when you speak of the Zionist cult like this, I guess we could also call it Jewish supremacy. supremacy. I mean, it's a Jewish supremacist society, right?
I think Jewish supremacy is definitely a characteristic of this ideology, of this cult, of this structure, this societal, political, economic structure.
Let me just say, whether it's a religious Jewish society or not, I mean, Jewish supremacist society is what we hear, for instance, Norman Finkelstein call it.
I think it's a main characteristic of it, but I don't think it's the root of the thing. Okay, I think that at the root of it there is a colonial project. Okay, there is a project that started around 150 years ago. Okay, with the early Zionists. This project was both part of the larger movement of colonialism in Europe, okay? And it was also simultaneously a reaction to the marginalization of Jewish communities in Europe and maybe in other countries. But the point is that this project fit both sides. So both, white European society was interested in a colonial project in what they called the Middle East, and both Jewish society or some factions of Jewish society felt that it was a good idea to have this thing, a safe haven for the Jewish population, where they can escape anti-Semitic behavior, okay, and marginalization. So these two forces joined hands, and through time they created this colonial project. This colonial project is maintained by a huge system of both military control, military force, economic support by the West, now mainly by the US, but also still by European countries, by diplomatic support by the US and European countries, and by a huge system of propaganda and indoctrination that is, of course, mainly centered on the cult itself, okay? And a huge part of this system of propaganda and indoctrination is the idea of Jewish supremacy. So Jewish supremacy, I don't think it's completely foreign to the Jewish religion at large, okay? There were probably voices expressing Jewish supremacy all along Jewish existence, but I think that this was appropriated by the Zionist project and ramped up, by a million,
Yeah.
and used as a powerful tool to justify everything that the state of Israel is doing to maintain its control of the land of Palestine.
Wow, there's a lot in that.
Yeah. This is the result of me. I didn't know any of this until like 2-3 years ago. Okay, I didn't understand any of this. I thought that there was a bad situation here. I thought that people around me were crazy. I thought that there was a lot of racism here, a lot of violence here, a lot of patriarchy here, a lot of bad stuff here. But I didn't understand the root cause. And what happened to me in the last few years, and the process that really accelerated since October 7th, because, everyone got extremely crazy around me, and I had to explain it, and I had to deal with it. And this made me think a lot and try to study a lot. And the place that I'm in right now is, I see that the root cause here is this colonial project called Zionism, okay?
Yeah. White people from Eastern Europe, basically.
So this is also interesting because, okay, you do I look white to you?
Well, you look about as white as I do, I think.
I don't think that's true. But in any case, if anyone is interested about my own identity, okay, my ethnic identity, I don't care about these things. Like, I don't care about these things, but the world does, so I need to deal with them. Okay, so my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Poland, and he escaped the Nazis and came to Palestine. Okay. My maternal grandmother, she was actually born in Palestine. She was born in 1939, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so in Palestine. And her family came from a town that is now in Belarus, okay, now considered in Belarus. And they came in the end of the 19th century. And they were part of, the start of the Zionist project, okay? But, so this is my European side. But on my father's side, my grandmother on my father's side, she came with her sister and her parents from Syria. She was born in Damascus. And they came in around 1949 here, right after the formation of the State of Israel. They came from Syria.
There used to be a pretty large Jewish community in Damascus. Of course, not so much anymore, but there was at one point.
And they, I read a testimony by my great aunt, my grandmother's sister. My grandmother is not with us anymore, unfortunately, but her sister is still alive, and she. I read a testimony that she wrote, or that she was interviewed, and they wrote the testimony, and she said that that in 1948, around 1948, there started to be tensions in Damascus between Jews and Muslims. Okay, and because her father was, sensing that stuff was not going to be to go well, he decided to escape first to Lebanon and then to down to Palestine. Okay, so yeah, she is. My grandmother was, and she is a refugee. Okay, from hard times in Damascus, where they were very well off. They were very wealthy. Okay, they had a huge house, and they had to escape. And let me finish the family tree. So my paternal grandfather, he was also born in Palestine, and his family was from Iran, okay, from the Shiraz area in Iran, and they came here in the mid-19th century, and they lived in Zafed, okay.
About the Jewish community from Iran, I hear that there's still some areas there where Jews are thriving and don't feel at all, like they live in a terror state. You know, we could see that from Max Blumenthal's recent visit to Iran. I don't know if you caught some of that.
I didn't know about it.
Yeah. Max Blumenthal, of course, is a Jewish American journalist who runs the Gray Zone podcast. So yeah, he just recently did a trip to Iran, and he was able to get some photos from that, also from Jewish communities. So that's also interesting to hear that's part of your lineage.
So my point is that the inhabitants, the people who are part of this Zionist cult, they are not. This is something that is just a misconception. It's not a homogeneous population in the sense that everyone is white European. This is just not true. Okay, so I would say that the population is now divided around half and half between Jews of European origin and Jews of, I would say, Arabic origin or Middle Eastern origin, or maybe North African and Iranian, and also there are Jews who came from Ethiopia. That's a big population. So
then all of these groups that
population.
Yeah, in this mixed population that you're talking about, but they still participated in this poll, right?
Yes. The poll represents the opinion of all of them together.
Yes. Okay? So clearly they share the same propaganda and all that is produced by the Zionist entity and has been for a long time.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. There is one thing that is shared to all Zionists, which is the opinion that in Palestine there should be as few Palestinians as possible, and that and as many Jews as possible, and that the Zionist project, the State of Israel, should be as powerful as possible. Okay, they maybe disagree about the tactics and the strategy to achieve this. Maybe they disagree about the aesthetics of it. Maybe they disagree about like specific details. Okay, but this core thing is shared to all Zionists.
Yeah, and they all want greater Israel, right?
No, that's not true. Okay. Liberal Zionists, the most common position among liberal Zionists is that they want to promote the two-state solution. Okay, they say until 1967 everything we did was a-okay. So the Nakba was maybe it wasn't nice, maybe it was ugly, but it was a-okay. We needed to do it. Okay, so 48 was okay. But 1967 was the real sin. This is like a very common position within liberal Zionists. 1967 was the real sin, which is the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank in 1967. Okay? And what they say is we need to backtrack. We need to promote the two-state solution, which is that the Palestinians get a state of their own in the West Bank and Gaza, which is I think like 25% of the area of Palestine, maybe even less, I'm not sure.
22%, I think is what.
22%. Okay, yeah. So my guess by imagining the map was close. Okay, so the Palestinians get that, and they should be happy and grateful that we gave them such an amazing deal, that we agreed to let go. Okay, and we get the rest because this is what we have from the 48
and deserve.
War. Yes. We deserve more. Yeah. They would say we deserve more, but we are so grateful. We want peace. We want peace. We want peace. This is what they say. We want peace. And peace for liberal Zionists, okay, another thing that is shared to all Zionists is the sense of supremacy, okay? That is something, I don't think that it's at the core of it. It's a tool that is being used, but you see how well it is being used here. So they feel like like this land belongs to them, okay, as Jews. And this expresses itself in the sense that they say, we will give the Palestinians a state. And this is the way that even the most left wing of liberal Zionists think, okay? They say, we will give the Palestinians a state, as if they are the ones who possess the ability to give anything to the Palestinians, okay? They are graciously giving them a state.
Very gracious people. And of course, this is echoed also by many Western liberal points of view that there actually could be a two-state solution.
Yeah, so something that I also realized, this is, okay, I thought until a few years ago that the so-called two-state solution is a good idea, okay? Because I was like, okay, what the fuck can we do? Okay, yeah, can I say this word?
Yes, you can say whatever words you use. There's no...
So I was like, okay, what can we do? We'll do this, okay? But I do remember myself thinking, okay, but how will this look? Like, there's like, just like geometrical limits to this, right? Because Gaza and the West Bank, they are detached, okay? So how is this going to look? This always bothered me in my brain. But I was like, okay, they will find a way. They will find a way. But again, in the last few years, I've gone through a process of radicalization in all fronts, and in the front of the struggle to liberate Palestine as well.
Maybe it's not radicalization. Maybe it's just peeling off layers that were put upon you as a child that you no longer need.
This is just the definition of radicalization, in my opinion. Okay, so radicalization. When I use the word when a lot of people use the word radicalization, they use it in a negative way, but I use it in a positive way.
Yeah.
What does radical mean? So the root. So the word radix in Latin means root. Okay, so I go to the root of the problem. I want to solve problems from their root, because I believe, so liberals, what liberals believe is that the systems should be upheld, but they should be reformed to make things better from inside the system. Okay, I am saying because the systems are designed to keep inequality, injustice, exploitation, enslavement, murder, slaughter, genocide, and the Holocaust. This is what the systems are designed to uphold. Okay, I prefer, not just prefer, I think that the only way forward is a radical solution, is to look at the systems from the outside, say the systems are not, they're not malfunctioning. They're working as designed to keep inequality, injustice, genocide, Holocaust, and so forth and so on. And the only way forward is to dismantle those systems, to solve the problem from its root.
Yeah,
and this is the process of radicalization that I went through.
That was my next question. And of course, that's for a lot of people, this means just a radical anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, anti-whatever position. But it sounds like you're saying that Israel will have to fall apart for the people living in Palestine to be able to coexist.
Yes, okay. So there is a quote by Martin Luther King that I really, really love. And in this quote, I'm not going to say it word for word. I don't remember it word for word, but he makes the distinction between negative peace, which is the absence of tension, and positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And he speaks about the so-called white moderate, who he says, in some sense, is even worse than the Ku Klux Klaner. Okay, and he says the white moderate says, I aspire to peace, to peace, to peace, but he means negative peace. He does not mean positive peace. And this is the trick of liberals. So a lot of liberals, Zionist liberals, speak about peace and about coexistence in, here in this land, okay, that I call Palestine. And that also is objectively called Palestine. And what they mean is that they keep their privilege, and the Palestinians keep what we so graciously allowed them to have. And they cannot complain, and they cannot resist. And the moment that they complain or resist, then they are being violent and aggressive and misbehaving. And then, like on the 7th of October, the liberal Zionists will say, oh, I am now, the word that they use is hitpakachti. I sobered up. I woke up to the reality of what the Palestinians are. Now I lost my compassion. Okay, I lost my compassion. By the way, compassion is a supremacist term. You can have compassion for someone who is lower on the rung from you. It is the opposite of justice. Okay, when people use compassion, know that they use compassion instead of justice. Okay. So I lost. Why? Because compassion is centered on the oppressor, on the one with the power, not on the one without power. The one with the power can have compassion and give the one without the power, rights. What are rights if they can be taken away? Okay, and they can lose their compassion, and then they can support a genocide while still thinking of themselves as peace-seeking, loving people. Okay? And this is how liberal Zionists are. Okay? So, what is the root cause of this? the root cause of this situation is a project that was set up in Palestine in the first half of the 20th century, the Zionist project, which culminated in the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, following and during the Nakba, which was the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. This is the title of a book by Ilan Pappé, the historian Ilan Pappé, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, called the Nakba, that happened in between 1947 and 1949. Israelis call it the War of Independence, okay, which has connotations of liberation from oppression. But this is not what it was. It was oppression. It was an ethnic cleansing, and the culmination of this was the creation of the State of Israel. And the State of Israel is a system. It's an economic, societal, political, military, diplomatic system designed to steal land, resources, and political, social, and economic status from the indigenous population of Palestine, called Palestinians, and give them to the settler population. I am part of it. Okay,
which is, of course, exactly the same thing that happened to when the United States of America was formed.
Exactly.
So there are
it's the same origin story.
It's the same essential way of colonialism. The two projects are in fact quite similar in its root.
Yes, I agree, and this is why it's no surprise that the U.S. and Israel are such good buddies. Okay,
yeah.
So to finish,
because they have to protect their own. I mean, their own history. Because if we don't support this colonial project, how can we even be a part of what we call the land of the free and home of the brave?
Yes, exactly. So they work together, okay? And the point is that as long as this system of disenfranchisement, of marginalization, of theft, and of oppression, and apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide exists, there cannot be coexistence, okay? There just cannot be. You cannot have coexistence between an oppressor and an oppressed. This is just not a thing that can be on the most basic level of the meaning of words. Okay, so and I must say, I never use terms like peace or coexistence anymore. Okay, because I know how tainted they are by liberal discourse. Okay. These terms were designed to present people who are oppressors as people who are seeking, peace and love and so forth and so on, even to themselves. Okay, and this is something that's very important to understand about Zionist propaganda. When people are from the outside are exposed to Zionist propaganda, a lot of it sounds really silly and weird and like not convincing at all, right? And I think something important to understand about it is that the goal of the propaganda is not really to convince you guys on the outside. It's to convince the guys on the inside.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
That while they're doing a genocide, they're doing it for peace. Okay? And this is similar to Vietnam. Fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is what Israelis believe, that they are fighting for peace.
Can we talk a little bit about, there has been clearly a shift recently, and I don't know if you believe in all of this, these aspects of this shift in Western media, which I'm sure, Israelis use the internet more than any country on the world. So I know you
yeah,
have
I heard
access to this. But, it was a little surprising to me that somebody like, for instance, Piers Morgan, the British uncensored program, who has been for the better part of a year been just repeating the question, do you support Hamas, to no end with all of his guests. But he has now, it seems, come to some sort of realization that this doesn't hold up anymore. But he couldn't help himself. He couldn't stop himself by criticizing Greta Thunberg recently, and he was even saying how beautifully wonderful and giving the IDF soldiers were when they presented the flotilla people with some water and sandwiches, doing a photo op there. So of course he then very quickly had to go back and criticize this young Swedish person who is, and from my view, doing something absolutely wonderful and brave, just like you are, of course they knew that they would be stopped. I mean, they realized that they're not stupid, but it's an act of love, as I see it, putting themselves on that boat, because now it will again generate more. Like there's a convoy of cars now coming from Tunisia all the way through, who intend to stop at the Rafah border.
Yes.
So
yes, it's a
I
great
mean,
march to Gaza with I believe thousands of participants.
yeah. So I mean, that's of course a significant event, But so my question is, how do you view this shift in Western media? Like, for instance, Piers Morgan. There are also others. I mean, you mentioned Tom York, the artist.
Yeah, Tom York.
I mean,
Classic
he'd had this episode when he was on some show in I don't know if it was Melbourne or Sydney or something, Australia, where somebody had disturbed him with the Palestinian flag, and he thought that was very unacceptable.
Very rude. Very rude.
Yeah, he thought that was rude, exactly. But apparently, recently, again, Tom York, of course, he's the singer of Radiohead and amongst other things. Apparently, recently, he has made some kind of statement against the genocide. But as you enlighten me what's going on here, and please also share your view about the whole Western possible shift. But he was very keen on putting it straight to that there's a government in Israel that's performing this. So it's Netanyahu, and it's Smotrich and it's Ben Gvir, and it's these people, that are in fact responsible for this. So they need to be removed. And then, and that sort of should then resolve the whole problem. He that's what I'm getting from his statement. I'm not sure what you feel about that, but
are you really not sure what I feel about that?
I am sure. Actually, I am sure about what you feel about that. But I mean, I don't want to put tomato juice in your cup.
Okay. So should I
let's
say
start,
what I think?
Let's start with this shift that's happening. How much of it you believe, and also then go into what you think about that some Western artists have also recently more been able to step up and say things, but most of them, not all of them, but they would just blame the current Israeli government.
Yes. So my opinion about this shift is similar to my opinion about the shift in within Zionist society with the liberal Zionists. Okay, and the point is that liberals be liberaling. Okay, and let's understand what liberals are. Okay, liberals are servants of the system. Okay, this is the most important thing to understand about liberals, because they present themselves as something else. It's even in the name. We are liberals. We are for liberty. No, this is a lie through and through. They are servants of the system. They are conservatives. The liberal is a type of conservative. Liberal is a type of fascist. This is something that I understood more and more and more. A few years ago, I used to be a liberal. Okay, at least in my behavior and like my outside political opinions. But I always had the anarchist core. I always had the radical core. And then I was exposed to content, mainly online, that really took apart the liberal veneer, okay, of civility. And this is something that I think is super important, okay? Liberals are servants of the system, but in a certain way, in a more manipulative and roundabout way.
Yeah. Polished.
Yeah. They have like this veneer of supporting equality, supporting, helping minorities, okay? Like they have their own language that is supposed to cover up their sense of supremacy, okay? They have a weird language where if you really take apart those terms, they disappear. They have no meaning, okay? So for example, they can support peace, okay? And the peace that they support is a peace where they are above other people, okay? And I think that the way liberals operate is that they feel, okay. I need to go deep. To understand this. One of the main tools that systems of control and oppression use to maintain their control is the tool of norms. And I think that this is maybe the least discussed and the most important tool being used. It's like a fundamental tool that always is in action. Okay, why? Because people need the support of their surroundings. We cannot live on our own. We cannot get food, shelter, clothes, like the basic necessities of life. It is extremely difficult to obtain them on our own, especially in this world that is completely controlled by the system of capitalism that has took hold of all resources. Okay? So, because of this, we need to play along. Because if we do not play along, then we might be ostracized, we might be marginalized, we might not be able to get the things that we need. So it is a very deep-seated fear to be left out, to be outside of, the group, of the tribe. And the way that systems of control use this is that they create norms. And norms are ways of behavior that are not discussed. It's not something that's discussed. It's something that's assumed. It's something that's transparent. You should do this and this and this and this and this. And there's no question of why you should do it, whether it's good to do it. Nothing of this sort. It's just like that. And then you either behave according to norms, or you get punished for it in all kinds of ways. Okay, and the punishments are they can be as simple as insults or mockery, or they can be like physical violence that you experience. They can be that you get, I don't know, sued and then you lose money, which is resources. They can be that you don't have connections, you burn bridges, so you don't have connections, so it's harder to cooperate with people around you, and so forth and so on. How do I know this? I know this because I challenged norms all my life, more and more and more and more and more. And it's gotten to the point that I find myself challenging almost like so many norms because I find them oppressive, violent, and genocidal. Okay, and for example, I challenge the norm that the state of Israel must exist to protect the Jewish people, and so forth and so on, of this bullshit. I challenge this norm, and this is one of the most deep-seated norm in the society that I live in. Another norm that I challenge all the time is the norm that humans, that the animals called Homo sapiens, that the animals who are mammals, who are apes, who are Homo sapiens, are in some way superior to other animals. I challenge this norm as well, and I challenge the norm that they are so superior that it's absolutely fine to enslave, abuse, exploit, and murder cows, chickens, sheep, goats, pigs, and other non-human animals, and then dismember their corpses, burn their corpses, and consume their corpses because some people find these corpses slightly tastier than tofu.
Yeah, and
Okay?
by the way, when we stopped, we should do an entire episode on only that. I think because it's a big
I would love
topic.
to, because it's a very important topic.
And maybe Tamar or your girlfriend can do. We talked about that, so.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Let's try
I would love to have a conversation.
Yeah, no,
about
let's
this.
absolutely try to do that. But let's try to go back to this shift.
So norms. I challenge those norms all the time, and I see the reactions that I get. And the result of me challenging norms more and more and more is that I'm more and more and more marginalized. I have basically 2 friends left here.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't get a normal job.
I think I can name them. It's Elik and it's Dan.
Yeah, Elik. So Dan is no longer here in occupied Palestine. He went to Germany.
Oh, he left. Okay,
and
I didn't know that.
And he and Ayelet now live with their infant daughter.
Right. Okay.
In Germany.
But Elik is okay. So sorry, but
I have another friend.
You have another friend
because he's not public facing, but that's like basically the friends.
But congratulations, you have 2 good friends.
That is true. That these are 2 good friends, but it's. I used to have like dozens of friends. I'm a very social person, and I don't have friends anymore because I argued and fought with all of them about what? About these 2 norms, basically. Okay, and I can't have a normal job here because if I have a normal job here, then I will be surrounded by carnist Zionists, people who support oppression, and I will just immediately have to fight with them and burn the bridge, which is what happened in my previous job. Okay, so I can tell you a story about my last normal job. Okay, so. I was teaching mathematics. Okay, I was doing a PhD in mathematics, and then I quit my PhD. I was planning to be a mathematician, but then I decided against it. I think, in retrospective, because it's playing along with the liberal system of academia. Okay, and then I went to teach math. And I went to teach math in all kinds of projects. And one of the projects was teaching ultra-Orthodox guys who didn't want to go in the usual route of ultra-Orthodox people in Israel. They wanted to study mathematics, study programming, and go to work in high tech. Okay? But what is high tech in Israel? It is intimately connected with the military-industrial complex. It is part of the military-industrial complex. And I was not aware enough of this. I felt like this was something good to do because ultra-Orthodox people in Israel are a highly marginalized community. They are very, very poor. They do not have resources, okay? They do not get proper education. They do not get the things that other populations in Israel.
Are you saying you felt compassion for them?
Yes, I'm saying that I did this because I felt that it was a good thing to do. But I feel like much of it was also real. These are I barely have connection with ultra-Orthodox people in my normal life because there is a very high level of separation between different populations, even within Jewish Israeli society. Okay, and this was also good in many, many senses. I made connections that I would not have made otherwise, and I think that there were a lot of good things happening there. But a few months in, there was a day where I came to work in the morning, and there was a lot of buzzing around, and people were very excited. Why? Because a very important person was about to come to visit, and they prepared everything like snacks and they cleaned the room.
Can I guess? Was this an employee from Elbit Systems?
Not exactly Elbit Systems, but you're very, very close. Yeah, it's like this. The answer is essentially correct. This was someone who was a very high up I don't know if he was like the manager of Rafael. Rafael is הרשות לפיתוח אמצעי לחימה. So this is the I don't know how it's translated, but it's like the group for the development of weapons. Okay, so it's like the biggest weapons company in Israel, and it's basically part of the army. It's like part of the army in everything but the official, declaration. Okay, there's like a lot of mixing. Soldiers work in Rafael, and people from Rafael work in the Israeli army. It's like the same thing. It's like an arm of the Israeli army. Okay, and a person who is very high up there came to speak. Why? Because they had to kiss his ass. Why? Because he is one of the people who gives employment opportunities to the graduates of this program. And I saw my boss standing next to this guy and joking about stuff. And the thing that he joked about, this was like 4 years ago, the thing that he joked about was the war in Ukraine. He said, yeah, there are a lot of wars over the world recently in this time, specifically the war in Ukraine. And don't tell anyone that I said this, but we're not shedding a tear about it.
Exactly. I can imagine. Fuck.
He just said this. Yeah. He just said this outright to a room full of like 150 people.
That is so disgusting.
He just said this. And then I saw my boss continuing the joke and joking around with him. And to be honest, I wanted to throw up. My soul wanted to throw up.
That's a collective sickness. I can't fucking believe it.
But this is what happened. I was there. So this was not the direct reason that I left this job, but it was a big part of it. And looking back, I could not have, imagine that I stayed there until October 7th. And then the support within ultra-Orthodox society in Israel, the poll that we mentioned, the 82%, within ultra-Orthodox society, it's 97%.
Yeah.
97% of ultra-Orthodox people support the complete expulsion and or extermination of all the inhabitants of Gaza. And these are the people that I was supposed to, teach. And how can I keep a normal job here? I cannot. So what I do now is I speak on my YouTube channel, and I'm basically a full-time activist. Okay, but this is difficult. Okay, it's difficult to maintain myself financially. On a material level, it's really difficult. So this is why norms are so powerful. This is why so many people play along with norms, because they know that otherwise they will be punished. Okay. And liberals, they
by the way, I mean, the entire Swedish government, except for maybe one little party on the left, who is the only party I think we mentioned that last time we talked to, but they are also slaves, complete and utter slaves. Every single ambassador who claimed to be working to support the Swedish cause and Swedish relations all around the world, not one single one has spoken up,
Because they know that the moment that they speak up, they will lose their
salary.
They will lose their status.
Exactly, and salary.
Yes. So this is how the system maintains the collaboration of liberals. Okay, and I think that this is why liberal Zionists supported the genocide. Almost all of them supported the genocide until, let's say, 2 months ago. And this is also why they started objecting to it around a month or two ago, a few weeks ago. Why? Because they, like good liberals, were looking at where the wind is blowing, okay? And they were like, okay, now a lot of people around the world, like people we work with, because those liberals, they might work in high tech, okay? So they have to work with people from the US or from Europe, okay? Or they like to think of themselves as belonging to the global community. Uh-huh. And they started getting a lot of criticism for what was going on in Gaza and for their support of it, or for not objecting to it, or for justifying it, or for excusing it. So two things happened. One was that they got more punishment from the outside for supporting what was going on. And the second was that there was less punishment from the inside for supporting it. And I think that the cause of this is because the genocide, what they call the war, has become less and less convenient for for Israel. Okay, it's something that is now hurting Israelis financially and materially in a way that now it's like not worth it anymore. Okay, they don't really care about Palestinians. It's just like because fighting a war costs money, it costs resources. Okay, and people the liberal Zionists, many of them serve in the reserve duty, okay? And many of them served many months in reserve duty, okay? And that means that they cannot develop their business, that they cannot be at home and raise their children, that they cannot maintain their personal relationships. It hurts them on a very immediate material level. So for a year and a half, they were like, okay, this is important. And then at some point, they were like, okay, this is too much for me. And I think that this is what, so all of these factors came together to make them to make them start, objecting to what was going on. And they can tell themselves that they now saw the light and that they are now moral, but this is just not the case. And how do I know this? Because when I challenge these people, or when I see them challenged like a little bit further from the position that is convenient for them right now, they immediately attack as normal. Okay, when I challenged them back in October, November, and December of 2023, and then I stopped because it was too difficult and there were no achievements. When I challenged them about their support for the genocide, they attacked me very, very severely.
Yeah.
Still, now they maintain their position that they are against what's going on in Gaza. But still, if you challenge them and you say, okay, but what about the root causes of what's going on here? They immediately attack you again in the same manner. Okay, so I think nothing changed. And this is exactly what I think is happening with Piers Morgan, for example. This guy, he is a multimillionaire, obviously, and he is very savvy in the workings of, the media, the new media, okay? And he knows what he needs to say and how he needs to behave to get the most views and clicks, and therefore money and status, okay? So he does what he needs to do, and when he feels that it's good for him to, attack a Zionist and say, but there's children being killed in Gaza, then he will do this. And if he feels that it's good for him to attack Greta Thunberg, then he will do this. He has no morals. He has no positions. This guy is a complete cynicist, and we have to understand this. He might tell himself that he is a good person, blah, 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 but that's just not the case, okay? He is a narcissist, a through and through narcissist, okay?
I got to ask you then, I mean, Piers Morgan is only one example out of many in this field of people talking and raising their voices now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, are you familiar with Glenn Greenwald and System Update? Okay,
No.
I recommend a little listen to that. It's by far the most, from my perspective, genuine sources of information and commentary out there. And this is a guy, he's a Jewish American who lives in Brazil. Now, he started The Intercept, but left when they wouldn't allow him to produce an article on the Joe Biden son and his laptop, Hunter Biden laptop. And so he left his own creation and started a news source from his home in Brazil. And of course, in the beginning, when he had lots of Jewish by default listeners to his program, but right after October 7th, he very quickly, because he's as close to free from norms and free from having to put yourself in a situation where you respond to a structure. He in fact demolishes it in everything that he does, you know. So there are people out there, I'm just saying, that are not caught by norms and that are not cynicists, like you say, for instance, Piers Morgan maybe. So I mean, and I mentioned it when we talked prior to this episode. I mentioned a few other names as well, you know, amongst the people that do what you do, but do it from outside. From a Western perspective, and that also involves, clearly, as I mentioned, some problems, because some of these guys get arrested. You know, like Richard Medhurst is one guy who I'll suggest that
I'm not
you
aware
look
of the names. Maybe I should
no,
be, but,
but
I'm not.
you should look into him. He's just one, and of course, you know. To give another example of an artist, you know, Kneecap, this Irish band who raised Palestinian flags on their stage at one point. They have also been subjected to a huge barrage of censorship. They're trying to, at least, you know, but the fact is they are not succeeding so much anymore, you know. With the
That
system
makes sense. This is
the
what I
the
described.
system is not succeeding in keeping them shut up, you know. And Glenn Greenwald again is definitely one of them. But let's go back also to this whole the shift that is happening, which, and quite frankly, also I think has made more people feel free to speak their minds. They, you know, they don't censor themselves so much anymore on social media like they used to. I mean, most people are still afraid, but the fear is kind of leaving now, I think, but not entirely. But I certainly feel free to say what I want and post what I want, you know. And of course, my audience is not what Glenn Greenwald is. But I mean, recently with him, there was a leaked sex tape, you know. They tried to from his private life, you know. And there's been other attempts to silence him. But I mean, the shift is still happening. It's still happening. And I want to ask you, from your own perspective in your situation, I mean, I have been a little worried about you at times because
I've been worried about myself.
And now you say that you have 2 friends left, and luckily you still have your girlfriend, right?
Yes, yeah. She's amazing.
And and you left this job because you didn't want to support the war industry, partly. But I mean, and now you're saying that you're just gonna continue to do this, putting your voice out there and try to make a living out of that. But that means that I mean, they're watching you too, right? I mean,
sometimes when I'm doing the podcast with Elik, we kind of talk about those, you know, the regime watching us, and we say, hello, Shin Bet, hello, Shabak, hello, Mossad, you know, we just say hello to them because we imagine that maybe someone is watching. But I don't know. I don't feel that I'm probably important enough to really be on the radar of these people. There's a lot of people who are like more important to them than I am. I don't want to be, you know, to have this self-importance. Okay, but maybe.
No, but that can happen. It can happen. Actuality, it can happen. You know, so. But I guess what you're saying is, for right now, you haven't experienced any like threats or attempts to silence you or shadow banning and stuff like that.
Okay, so first of all, you don't really like in the case of shadow banning. I don't know. Maybe I do experience it. Maybe my channel was shadow banned, and that's why I only have 5,000 subscribers and not, I don't know, 30,000. Maybe. I have no idea. These things are subtle and they're hard to identify, and this is how oppression works. It usually works, you know, behind the scenes and underground. It's not the operation of fascism is usually not apparent. So I don't know. I did get threats like in October of 2023 when I started writing on my Facebook page. I started writing on my Facebook page stuff against the genocide and against Zionism in general. And at one point, like this comedian guy, like this extreme Zionist comedian guy who's like really big on social media, he shared one of my posts, and this post was actually about my vegan friends who were active for liberation of non-human animals, but were supporting the genocide. So I was like, if you support the continued oppression of the Palestinians, then you shouldn't call yourself vegan anymore. This was the post. And it was like a silly post. And then for some reason, he shared this and he made a joke about me. He said, this is a good example of Zionist humor, very, very high level, subtle, humor. He said, go sit on a block of tofu. And that's his idea of a joke. And this post got like thousands of likes, and a lot of people started swarming into my Facebook page. And there were a scary couple of days where my inbox was flooded with hundreds of messages, all of them containing hate speech, all of them containing, curse words and mockery and humiliation, many of them containing death threats, rape wishes, stuff like that. Okay. So both my Instagram and Facebook inboxes were flooded with these messages, and at some point I was like, "This is..." I was doxxed, and members of my family were doxxed. Okay, my mother and my sister, they were doxxed, and this was getting really scary.
Maybe you should explain what that means for some.
Doxxed means that they found an incorrect address. Okay, there was an address online of my family, but this was not a current address. It was incorrect, and they spread it around. They spread their identity numbers, like their ID card numbers, and their details, their names, and the address that was incorrect, in hopes that maybe some people will, persecute them. Yeah, I don't know. This is scary. So this became quite scary, and there was a very scary atmosphere within Jewish Israeli society at the time, especially for people who were against the genocide, because it was one of the darkest times of genocidal frenzy. It was the darkest time of genocidal frenzy that I experienced around. Okay,
so that was a while back, though. Haven't you had any significant experiences since then? Because you become more and more vocal, and you become more and more out there.
But I also removed myself from Zionist society. I don't interact with Zionists anymore at all. I speak in English on my channel. I don't speak in Hebrew because I don't want to speak to Zionists, because it's very dangerous and unpleasant. At the very least, unpleasant, and might be dangerous. And also, I need to tell. So I cannot tell a lot of details about this, but there is a lawsuit against me for slander. Okay, and this is a way that some Zionists are using the judicial system to silence me, because I said stuff against Zionism, and they perceive it as slander, and maybe the Zionist system will also perceive it as slander. And this has caused a lot of legal problems for me, and this has been going on for almost a year now. Okay, and I don't know when it will end. Okay, so the system is persecuting me in some ways. There are other people that the system is persecuting way, way more. But I believe that the reason that I'm not being directly threatened or attacked is that I don't pose a threat to the system. I'm just a small channel on YouTube with like 5,000 subscribers. Who gives a shit about him? Okay, I think that if I manage to get a bigger audience, and the system feels that I'm a bigger threat, maybe I will experience more of this. I don't know. And also, I experienced persecution when I went to protests. Okay, so this is, if you go to a protest, especially if the protest is radical and anti-Zionist, the police will sometimes beat you up. They rough you up. They beat you up. They take you. I wasn't arrested, but I was detained for like an hour. Like, you experience all kinds of stuff, okay? And much of it is scary, and you also stop yourself in advance because you're like, I don't want to get in that situation because I feel that this situation might be dangerous. Maybe the system will, and you don't know. You don't know what the system will do to you. So you have to be smart and cautious about it. For now, I'm okay. But that's all I can say.
Can we pause 2 minutes?
Yes, definitely.
I just need to replenish my tomato juice. And
wonderful. Okay.
So then you have not at this point then experienced too many threats, although you have been so incredibly vocal. But what about, say, for instance, Elik? He's also, has he been experiencing anything? Or maybe I should ask him.
You should ask him, but
Yeah.
I know that he has experienced some. So again, when you go against the system goes against you, and the system uses its servants to go against you. So I know, for example, that Elik had a very scary experience where he was on the train, and someone who was like an acquaintance of him, a friend of his, and sees what kind of things he's been saying, started calling him out on it, and started shouting very, very loudly in a train full of people, many of them soldiers in the army, many of those soldiers carrying weapons. He started shouting very loudly, this guy is a traitor, this guy is bad-mouthing Israel all over the world, blah, 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 blah. And he had to deal with this situation. And I know that this was a very scary situation for him. And, stuff like this happens, and stuff like this always can happen. But it's very important for me to say that this is an example of how people like me and Elik, we were both born into this society, into this cult, into this system, but we were born in a specific position in this system. I was branded Jewish Israeli by the system. I was not branded Palestinian by the system, or Arab, or whatever. And this means that I have a lot of privilege within this system.
Of course.
So I think it's this is an example of how I choose to use this privilege to go against the system, because I know that if a Palestinian person, doesn't matter if that Palestinian has Israeli citizenship or not, talks like I do, they will be much more heavily persecuted, probably arrested immediately. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an example of how I am privileged in this apartheid system called the State of Israel.
I understand that, and of course they would be subject to much more horror than perhaps you. But since you are one of the few voices, I mean, you're not the only one, but you're. It's important that I've been concerned about your welfare, so I wanted to at least hear what's going on.
I appreciate the concern. I appreciate, but I will continue nonetheless.
No, you will. Did we say, by the way, enough about the Tom York?
No, I think Tom York is another example of what I was talking about. Okay, so if you read that post by Tom York, and maybe I because when I was first exposed to this, I came to my girlfriend and I read it. I did a dramatic reading of it, and a lot of people have been asking for this kind of content. Maybe I will do this. It's a little bit late, but maybe I will do it, because if you read the words that Tom York wrote, this is like it's like they asked an AI engine to simulate, the most classic example of a liberal narcissist talking about the whole thing is me, how I was attacked, how I am the victim, how and the way that he talks and the content of it is both siding and misrepresenting history and misrepresenting the situation and blaming the government, even though the entire Israeli society is culpable for this and was participating in this, doing this, supporting this. So it reads like a classical liberal, liberal Zionist text, phrased by a narcissist who feels that they are the real victim in this situation and not the actual people being genocided and ethnically cleansed. And I feel that, again, this is just a response to changing incentives, okay? His incentive until now was to keep his mouth shut because that way he could get the most popularity and the most money. But all of a sudden he started feeling, oh, my revenue is being hurt here. People are whispering about me, so I better say something. So he said the most milquetoast thing that he could say to satisfy those pesky critics. That's the way that it reads.
Yeah. What would you say about Roger Waters and the way that he has been vocal?
So I'm not super aware of what Roger Waters. I didn't go deeply into his opinions. My impression is that he is a person who does care about oppression and who does want to go against oppression. I do get another impression that he might get a little bit superficial and conspiratorial at times. Okay. But I don't think that really takes away from his intentions, which I think are positive and good. Okay, this is the impression that I get, but I'm not. Probably your impression is as good as mine. Okay, I don't know.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the ICJ and the ICC. They have whatever you think about these courts. I mean, they are likely also to an extent perhaps infiltrated by agendas that make some judgments impossible, but nevertheless, there are arrest warrants now out for Netanyahu, Gallant, and I think Smotrich as well. And of course, there are some governments that have Western governments that have been clear about that they will act on these warrants. Some have been clear that they won't. Spain, for instance, have been pretty vocal about it. But what would you think will happen if all of a sudden these three guys, these three genocide makers, in fact, were arrested? Would that, do you think, help with the first steps to dissolve the Zionist entity, or would the Knesset be immediately populated by other genocide makers?
Okay, so this is a difficult question, okay? But I don't know exactly, okay? I imagine, okay. So there are like 17 points running around in my mind at the same time, so I will try to organize them, okay? Or at least 4 of them. So first of all, we need to understand that the problem is not the Israeli government. Liberal Zionists would love you to think that the problem is the Israeli government, but that's not true, okay? The people who are supposed to be the opposition to the government are also genocidal maniacs, okay? So Benny Gantz, who is supposed to be the opposition to Netanyahu, was an enthusiastic participant and a leader of this genocide, and still is. And by the way, just yesterday I saw a post by Benny Gantz, again the leader of the opposition in Israel, and he said, "I disagree heavily with Itamar Ben-Gvir, like the head fascist 13-year-old boy in the body of a 50-year-old man. So I disagree deeply with his positions, but, and when someone says X but Y, know that Y is what they want to say. The part after the but is the part that really matters. But it's still wrong that anti-Semitic bodies are persecuting members of the parliament of Israel, blah, 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 blah. So in the end, he is on the same side as Ben-Gvir, okay? And this is true for all of Israeli society, even those who are part of the opposition to Bibi and his government, to Netanyahu and his government, were participants in the genocide. They are all reserve, they are all soldiers or in reserve duty, or the pilots who fly the planes, who drop the bombs, who are one of the most, heavy, their culpability is one of the highest. They all, or the vast majority of them, do not vote for Bibi. They vote for the opposition. They are liberal Zionists. Okay, so it's a ridiculous claim, in my opinion, that this genocide was perpetrated by the government of Israel. It was perpetrated by Zionist society. Okay, and as a result of this statement, I can only assume that if Netanyahu is removed from power in some way, which I am highly doubtful of, and this will be my next point, okay? If Netanyahu is removed in some way, who will he be replaced by? He will be replaced by people like Benny Gantz or Yair Lapid or Naftali Bennett, or people like that who are Zionists as well, who supported the genocide just as well, and who will continue the oppression of the Palestinians in their own way. Maybe that way will be slightly more aesthetic, but it will not be less horrific, okay? It will not be less oppressive. They are still part of Zionist society. And now if we go wider, we zoom out, I think that this hope that institutions like the ICC and the ICJ will solve any geopolitical problems is a naive hope, okay? Because we have to understand that these institutions are, in the end, part of the establishment. They are part of the system. They are an integral part of the system. They are, we need to understand that the system is made up, generally speaking, of two factions. One of them is the overtly fascist and extremist and fundamentalist faction. And the other faction is the liberal faction, which is essentially another part of the same system, only with a different veneer, a veneer of civility, a veneer of politeness, of rule of law, of stuff like that. Of in Hebrew, it's called mamlachtiyut. It's like respectability. Respectability, maybe that's the best word. Respectability. Okay? But even though these two sides pretend to argue all the time, like in the US, you see the Democratic Party and the Republican Party that pretend to argue with each other all the time, this is a charade. Okay?
Yeah, it's a one-party system, and
Exactly.
there's really no difference there. It's just it's just, like you say, a charade,
Yes, and I think that the ICC and the ICJ are just a part of the liberal side of the system. This is like a good cup, bad cup situation. They're all cups. One of them is one side plays the good cup, and the other side plays the bad cup. And this is how they get you. And I think that one of the most important things that anyone who wants real change in the world should understand is that the only way to get real change, not cosmetic change, but real, deep, meaningful change, is to understand that the system is not on your side, not the ICC, no side of the system is on your side. The only way to get meaningful change is to dismantle the system. Okay, and I need to explain what dismantle means, because when I say dismantle Zionism, for example, dismantle the state of Israel, dismantle capitalism, dismantle human supremacy, stuff like that, conservatives will always take my word, dismantle, or abolish, or words like that, and they will twist them around to present me, the radical, as the one who is being violent and aggressive, while in reality, the system is the one being violent and aggressive. When I say dismantle, I mean that we take these systems, and what are systems? Systems are modes of relationships between individuals. This is what systems are. So the current mode of relationships between human individuals in the land of Palestine is called the State of Israel and the Zionist project. And this mode of relationships is a mode of apartheid, of oppression, of supremacy, of hierarchies, of exploitation, of genocide, and of ethnic cleansing. I do not like this mode, and I want to change it. I want to take this system, to dismantle it, and replace it with something better. For example, I want to replace it, even though I'm an anarchist and I'm against states, still I think it would be an improvement to have one democratic state between the river and the sea. And this vision is shared. It's not just my vision, but for example, it is shared by my friend Muhammad, who lives in Dir el-Balah refugee camp in the Gaza Strip and is now suffering starvation, is now suffering genocide, has lost many, many friends. He didn't lose friends like I lost friends. I lost friends. They are still alive, but they are just no longer my friends. He lost friends because they were murdered by this system that I want to abolish. And we both want to abolish the system of Zionism and replace it with one democratic state for all inhabitants between the river and the sea, for all 15 million inhabitants between the river and the sea, where everyone enjoys justice, equality, freedom, and where your political status is not connected to your ethnic background or to any other arbitrary characteristic.
You know, I think we talked about this before, and I mentioned this before when we talked to, but, you know, Gaddafi wrote a book about this called The White Book, and he called the name Israel-Stina.
Okay.
But basically, it was, he's no longer with us, and we all know why, but
But
so...
I don't want Israel-Stina. I don't want that.
No, of course.
I want Palestine. I want the land of Palestine to also be a state. That's what I want.
He was a little too accommodating. Not accommodating enough, but...
yes, not accommodating enough to not be murdered by the system. But he tried to play it, pragmatically. But I have come to realize that pragmatism, in this sense, is not pragmatic at all. The only pragmatic way is to stay radical and true to your real values.
Can we talk a little bit about, just so that people can get an understanding for how bad it really is, how ill this collective sickness that permeates occupied Palestine by that have come to such an extreme that within Israel there's now people making money on creating genocide tourism.
Yes.
Where fathers are proud to bring their little 3-year-old sons and bring popcorn and maybe put on a barbecue, and there are people organizing sort of like going to a movie, a place where Jewish Israelis can sit and enjoy looking at how Palestinian children mothers and fathers are exterminated.
Yes, so this is indeed one of the most extreme cases of the derangement of Zionist society. I do want to preface this with the following. When I talk about how deranged Zionist society is, sometimes people take it in the direction of there is something inherently wrong with these people. And now you can already see how this is going into anti-Semitic territory, true anti-Semitic territory, not just the accusation by Zionism to defend itself and justify itself. How these people there's something inherently wrong with them, and then I don't know where people can take this. When I say that Jewish Israeli or Zionist society is deranged, I mean that there is a system that is making them deranged. They were born into a cult. There's nothing inherently wrong about them. Their circumstances are the ones that shaped their minds and their hearts. And therefore, if we change the circumstances, then their minds and hearts will change. And this is, as a radical leftist, this is what I want to do. I want to change the circumstances of everyone so that everyone is not poisoned like this, okay? So this is you mentioned this, you alluded to this, but I want to make this extremely clear before I talk about the derangement. Okay. But yes, so you told me about this thing. I heard a few things about this. I know, first of all, I know that this is nothing new, okay? Back in 2014, when there was a very aggressive assault on Gaza, where around 2,000 people were murdered, and I remember how back then this number 2,000 seemed huge to me, and it is objectively a huge number of people being murdered in a few months. But now we're talking about, I don't know how many, maybe 100,000 people, maybe 200,000 people murdered in the span of just over a year and a half. So the numbers are now, 50 times worse, 100 times worse, I don't know. So I remember back then, there was already stuff like that happening. So people were coming from the city of Sderot, which is right on the border, right on the Gaza wall, and they were sitting on a high hill, and they were watching the Gaza Strip being bombarded, and they were celebrating it. This is nothing new. Already 10 years ago, this was happening. But like everything about the derangement of Israeli society, of Jewish Israeli society, of Zionist society, whatever terms you want to use, this ramped up, a million times following October 7th. Everything that was hidden is now revealed. Everything that was shameful is now a source of pride. And I heard a little bit about these tours, but because you asked me about them before we talked, I started looking up like the tours, and I found websites that you can go and like click a button and order a special tour with a tour guide, and so the tours are mainly centered around stories of heroism. Okay, and this is Zionist society is and the Zionist narrative and the Zionist mythology is very much based on stories of heroism of its soldiers. Okay, and it's all framed in a sort of David versus Goliath way, where we are always David and and the others are always the Goliaths. Okay, and I remember when I was a young child or a teenager, they would take us to class trips, okay? And class trips in Israel, they are always in some way, there is involved like a story of heroism. They take you to a monument, they take you to a place where a battle was happened, and they tell you about the heroic stories of the fighters in this battle. Looking back, I see that the stories were always about people who were doing ethnic cleansing and policing of indigenous people and the indigenous people were fighting back. They were the real heroes. The indigenous people were the real heroes, and they fought back. And sometimes they had small achievements, and sometimes the forces of ethnic cleansing and policing got the better of them. And these are the heroic the heroic stories that I heard were about oppressors managing to oppress the indigenous people or not managing to oppress the indigenous people, and then they are, the saints, the fallen heroes. Okay. And this is the kind of tourism that I found on a quick Google search about the heroism of October 7th, about those who had to hide, who were in the Nova party and had to hide in like the bunkers, and the soldiers who came to help, and those who eliminated the terrorists, and so forth and so on. The heroic stories of battle and survival, and the stories of the poor victims of what happened on October 7th. And one stage of this is they take you to look at the Gaza Strip. You go on a high hill, and then there's like binoculars there, and you look at the Gaza Strip, and you see what's going on in the Gaza Strip. This is one of the highlights of the tour. And I'm sure that the different factions of Israeli society react to this differently. But I also know that there is a huge part of Israeli society. I don't know if it's the majority or just half or maybe slightly under half, but it's definitely around half of Israeli society that actively relishes in suffering of Palestinians. And we see this all around us. You mentioned the flotilla, okay? And what I experienced in the last few days is a lot of Israelis, now I'm talking about all Israelis, just mocking Greta Thunberg and the other people on the flotilla, calling them, innocent children who were convinced to support Hamas or actual Hamas supporters, and they were relishing in mocking them, and in the way that, in their opinion, the Israeli government got the upper hand on them. Okay? And this is the way that Israeli society, that the psyche of Israeli society operates. That if you are powerful and you manage to humiliate someone who is below you, then this is a good thing. This is something that I experienced when I was a young child. I experienced a lot of bullying and mockery because I used to be weaker, okay? And maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm an anti-Zionist now. Maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm vegan now. Maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm anti-oppression, that I experienced this in school and from my peers, okay? But my point is that a lot of Israeli society and Israeli humor is based on mockery. And I feel that so if you find the average liberal Zionist, they will not mock directly the victims of the genocide. Probably now. Maybe a year ago, maybe yes. Now, maybe not. Okay? But a huge faction of Israeli society will definitely, to this day, mock heavily the victims of their genocide. So I imagine that a lot of people go to watch Gaza and they enjoy what they see. They enjoy looking at the destruction. They enjoy looking at the death. It is a sadism that is associated with the indoctrination and propaganda that is a result of the indoctrination and propaganda of this cult. Okay? And I don't know if there is any reason to dismantle this cult. Here it is. Anything that results in this kind of disgusting behavior and disgusting attitude towards others, I think must be abolished immediately.
Alon, I asked you this question last time you were on, and then I want to ask you again because things have changed. You have been online a lot, and you have talked to many people, and perhaps your perspective has also changed. You've become perhaps more peeled off, and maybe you have more facts today, or maybe not. But when you look at what happened on October 7th and the Nova Festival, and we also think about the Hannibal Directive, and we look at the amount of cars that were burnt, likely by high-powered ammunition, which of course is not something that the freedom fighters in Gaza were in possession of. Would you say today, how is your perspective today on the possibility that the whole killing of some 1,000 people on October 7th came in very handy for what the next step of the expansion of the Zionist entity would be, and
Okay.
is it possible that like has been confirmed, in fact, also by I think some Israeli papers, that the government of the Zionist entity, in fact, funded and knew that this was going to happen?
So my short answer is I don't know. Okay, I don't know. And also I think no one really knows. Okay, maybe some people who are in very specific, positions can know, but I think most people cannot know, and I do not know either. I also, frankly, did not look deeply into this because honestly, I don't think it matters that much. Okay, my position will not change at all. My political position will not change at all, or at least not dramatically, if I find out one way or another. So I can guess, okay? I can give my best guess. And my best guess is that, like most things, the answer is mixed, okay? And so, okay. Definitely, there is an organization called Hamas that is operating in Gaza, and that is controlling the Gaza Strip to some extent, okay? Because the real control of the Gaza Strip is by the Israeli government, okay? This is the Israeli army is controlling the Gaza Strip. This is just a physical fact, okay? But Hamas is organizing the internal affairs of Gaza, and definitely this group organized and executed a military operation on October 7th, where they crossed the wall of the thing that I think of as a concentration camp, and now an extermination camp, a huge concentration camp. They crossed the wall, and they intended to to capture as many hostages as possible, and perhaps kill as many people as possible on the other side of the wall. And they managed to execute this plan to some degree of success. Okay. Definitely, there was information available about this plan beforehand. Definitely, there were stories on Israeli media about mainly young women who were situated on the wall, on the border, and their job was they are called tatzpitaniot, which means watchers, okay? So their job was to watch what is going on in the Gaza Strip, and mainly and specifically on the other side of the wall, and to alert to certain developments. And there was a story that was presented in Israeli media as a mistake, as a faux pas, as like a scandal of like it was an error, okay? And the error was that arrogant male commanders, high commanders, did not listen to the women on the ground, okay, who were reporting what they saw, and they didn't react accordingly. This is the way that it was presented on Israeli media. You can say that this is actually more a situation of they didn't want to listen because they got orders from higher up that told them not to listen. You can say this. I don't know. I absolutely don't know. And I think it's probably a mix of the two. Okay? Here is another reasonable thing to say. It was definitely convenient for the government at the time for something like this to happen. So on October 7th, and in the next few weeks, one of the most prominent voices, especially from liberal Zionists, was about how Netanyahu failed and how he should be removed from his position immediately. Yeah. And of course, this was a danger to his rule in some sense, and the government's rule in some sense, because they criticized Netanyahu and the entire government. They said the biggest failure in the history of the state of Israel. And obviously, this is in some sense true. Okay, and this obviously was a danger to Netanyahu's rule. But the fact is that Netanyahu is still the prime minister of Israel, so it probably was not as big a danger as it was presented. And we have to mention the background, which is that Netanyahu is now, not just now, but in the last, I think, decade, like 8 years, he has been facing criminal charges of corruption. And this trial, there are like 4 different trials, like one trial with 4 different cases of corruption being presented against Netanyahu. And this trial has been going on for years and years and years and years, and nothing is happening. Okay, and there are a lot of protests against Netanyahu by the liberal Zionist faction. Nothing is happening. After October 7th, nothing happened. There's no he will continue to be the prime minister of Israel until something changes. And I don't know. My best guess is that the something that needs to change is that the larger forces responsible here, the larger geopolitical forces, will not need him as a servant anymore. I don't think that the regime of Netanyahu is dependent. I don't think that this is democracy, even in the most narrow of senses. I don't think that the regime of Netanyahu is dependent on a popular opinion in Israel. I don't think it does, okay? So, another thing that we need to acknowledge is that many of the people killed on October 7th were not killed by members of Hamas, but they were killed by friendly fire. The most
this is why I mentioned the Hannibal Directive too.
Yes.
But apart from the Hannibal Directive and friendly fire, I mean, because the narrative is interesting to look at, I think, because this narrative is also what helped get the Zionist. We had all these people all over the media at a few days after October 7th say, I am a Zionist, you know. Mm-hmm. Biden has been very proud to say that, Trump equally, and, you know. But if you look at the actual amount of Israelis, young Israelis, at this music festival who were killed, and how many of them were in fact, I mean, the whole beheading of babies and rape, collective rape, that's been debunked.
That just didn't happen.
And time
this is
again.
Just blood libel against Palestinians.
That's been debunked.
Meant to justify a genocide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just that's it. But if you look at friendly fire, the Hannibal Directive,
Yes.
and the amount of, I don't know how many cars. It looked at some of the pictures, it looks like it's hundreds, and they literally burnt to the ground, and that can only happen by so-called friendly fire.
I don't know. Okay, so my answer about this specific thing is I don't know. Okay, yeah. I can say something more general. Okay, I can say something more general, and this is the reason that this specific fact does not matter to me. Okay, this specific question does not matter to me because I know that on a deep level, definitely what is going on here, like, okay, definitely in situations of colonialism, of colonialist oppression of indigenous population, the colonialist regime always benefits from, in some sense, from the resistance of the indigenous people to the colonialist regime. This is just a fact. If the indigenous people do not resist, then the oppression is deepened slowly, okay? Slowly, because the lack of resistance is being exploited by the colonialist regime and those in power to deepen the oppression. If the indigenous people do resist, then they are branded as, terrorists or savages or whatever. And then this is an excuse to deepen the oppression in a quicker and more blunt
way. Yeah.
So this is the main reason why I am against colonialism, okay? Because it's a situation where no matter what you do, you are under the hammer and the boot of your oppressor, and you have literally no options to resist it effectively, okay? But this is just a phenomenon that is it's just a general phenomenon in these kinds of situations. And of course, the resistance operation of October 7th, okay? And this is a point where I have to be really careful about what I say, okay? Because I'm worried that the Zionist regime will take my words and twist them around to present me as some sort of terrorist supporter, because this is what they love doing, okay? But it is just a fact that what happened on October 7th, the October 7th attack had two main results. One result was that the Zionist regime used this attack as an excuse to enact a genocide that they wanted to do anyway, and were looking for an excuse to do anyway. Whether this attack was initiated or allowed by the Zionist regime, or it almost doesn't matter, because it certainly served the interests of the Zionist regime in the sense that it gave them an excuse to deepen the oppression in a very, very aggressive way, to enact plans that were there for decades of ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza. This was one result. The other result of the October 7th attack was the exposure of the derangement of the Zionist project of the Israeli society, and that this is a cult, that this is a genocidal cult. This exposed it to the entire planet. I know that until October 6th of 2023, I felt very lonely, both within my own society and outside. Why? Because within my own society, I was an outcast because I was going against the cult. I already defined myself as anti-Zionist, and I was completely ostracized and shunned from this cult. And I was very distant from the people around me in just the basic way that I perceived reality, okay? But also I felt isolated from the rest of the world, because most people around the world did not really care about what was going on in Palestine. And even if they did care, they didn't know much. So I was traveling through Europe for like 3 months back in 2022, okay? And I remember that whenever I would meet people, and I still told them that I was from Israel, I would never say this now, okay? But I still thought, they asked, where are you from? You meet other travelers. They ask, where are you from? And I went to Israel. And they were like, so a lot of people were like, okay, cool, whatever. And a lot of people were like, can you tell me what the fuck is going on there? And what I said to people was that this was a deranged cult and so forth and so on. Okay, I explained how insane it was. And I know that a lot of people were very surprised by what I was saying. And maybe some of them didn't really believe me. Maybe some of them heard other Israelis describe what was going on and they were, propagating Israeli Hasbara. So they were like, okay, so this guy tells me this and the other guy tells me this and I don't know who to believe. Okay. And I felt very isolated. I thought that no one knew how deranged Israeli society was, maybe except for Palestinians, okay, who were experiencing the derangement firsthand, okay. But after October 7th, very, very quickly, and this is something that I did after October 7th very, very heavily, I was like, okay, people are listening. I now have to push information about what is going on in Israel. And if you scroll back on my Instagram profile, Instagram page, you will see that the first 20 or 30 posts after October 7th are me, the vast majority of them are me showing the derangement of Jewish Israeli society and the Zionist cult, okay? Because I felt that this was very important, that people understand what was going on. And this was done by many other people. I was just a small part of this, but I feel that now we got to, you said this, we got to a situation where most people in the world, those who are willing to those who are interested in the truth and not, resistant to the truth, those who are interested in the truth, know the truth about how deranged this cult is. And I think that this is a great accomplishment because the first step in solving a problem is obviously acknowledging that there is a problem and defining the problem. And I think that the problem here is the Zionist cult and the derangement of the Zionist cult. We need, if we want to solve this problem, we have to acknowledge that this is the problem. Okay, so this is the second result of what happened on October 7th. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but in this sense, the operation executed by Hamas on October 7th was a great success. I think that this is what they wanted to happen. I think that you can agree with this logic or not. You can say that this is a completely cynical logic. You can say this, and I would not disagree. This is a valid opinion. But their logic was, if we do this, then the state of Israel will do what it actually did, and the derangement of the Zionist cult will become visible, will be revealed, and then this will start the process of the dissolvement of the Zionist cult and the liberation of Palestine. And I do not, and this will have a heavy price of hundreds of thousands of murdered Palestinian people, but in their eyes, this was a price worth paying. And I think that they were right. Okay, you might think that this is a horrible thing to do, and this is a valid position. But I think that they were right in what they predicted would happen.
Well, I hear more and more people amongst friends and also on social media that are, like you're saying, the empire. If you take Star Wars as an example, people are now not afraid to say that the Palestinians, I mean, they are equal the resistance. I mean, the freedom fighters, and the state, the Zionist entity is in fact the empire.
It's not the empire, but it is the faction of the empire in the Middle East.
Yes, but if you make the comparison to the Star Wars movie, this is in fact, people are not afraid of saying that at this point. So there has been some development, clearly,
Definitely. I think that they are right, that this is the first step in the liberation of Palestine. I think it's just a correct statement on a historical level. I'm not a prophet, but a lot of experts are saying this, that the Zionist project will not exist in like a decade or two.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying that.
This is just a logical thing to say, that this is probably what will happen.
Can I ask you also about, there was an anti-Zionist conference, I think recently, that took place. Was it Vienna?
No, it's starting in 2 days, actually.
It's starting in 2 days. Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I don't know a lot about this Congress. So what I understand from reading about this Congress is that it was organized by Jewish anti-Zionists in Vienna who want to send out the message that Judaism and Zionism is not the same thing, that opposing Zionism is not an anti-Semitic position, and that the dissolvement of Zionism is actually to the benefit of
the Jews. Yeah.
So I agree with this claim on a pragmatic level, but I must say that this is not the way that I look at things, because I look at the Jewish identity as something that was forced on me from the outside. I reject these identities of Jewish and Israeli. I am now, my political position now, my deepest political position, is one of anarchism and what's called total liberation for all living beings. I believe in is opposing all forms of oppression.
Yes.
For the liberation, the total liberation of all living beings. And this is why I oppose the system of oppression called Zionism. This is why I oppose the systems of oppression called patriarchy, capitalism, states, human supremacy, and carnism.
Now, clearly, you have a very broad view, a very broad take on this.
Yes, and I believe that this is the only way to really achieve our goals. Okay, right. I believe that if we do not oppose all oppression, then we do not oppose any oppression. And
but what you said, the way that you described this anti-Zionist conference, I mean, there was nothing about the discussion and that I felt was not something productive could come out of a conference like that. Because, I mean, there are clearly, when I think a lot of Westerners also, they need some help to detach themselves. Yes, we're talking norms and etc. But I have, for instance, friends whose grandparents were involved in helping Jewish refugees coming from Denmark to Sweden, etc. And that's of course a very significant memory, an important memory, where they have been able to help Jews like this, and so. In order for Western people they need some help to detach themselves from this phenomenon that they think being anti-Zionist is really not being
this is
Jewish,
one of the, we have biggest tricks that the Zionist system produced. Okay,
exactly.
The equation of Zionism and Judaism is something that is at the core of Zionist propaganda, and therefore definitely it should be attacked. Okay?
Yes. But it sounds to me like this conference, you decided against going there or something. I don't know.
So this is not the reason that I decided not to go. Okay? If this was the only problem that I had with the Congress, then I would gladly go and participate in it.
Okay.
The reason that I decided not to go is that this Congress that is supposedly against oppression, that is supposedly for liberation and for equality, I believe it is not really that. Why? Because the food that will be served in this Congress is the result of the biggest Holocaust in the history of everything, is the burned, dismembered corpses of my cows, chickens, pigs, friends. Okay, my friends who happen to be cows, chickens, pigs, sheep, and so forth and so on.
I hear you.
And I turned to the organizers of this Congress and I said to them, this is very problematic. This Congress is not inclusive. It's inclusive to everyone except to Zionists and to people who oppose the non-human animal Holocaust.
Right. I hear you.
And if you want to hear more about this, my girlfriend Tamar and I...
Yeah, I would love to do that.
One second. Yeah. My girlfriend Tamar and I did 2 episodes, 2 live streams about this subject where we explained this thoroughly for a combined time of 3.5 hours, 4 hours. You can go to my channel, The Hebrew Canaanite, and see these explanations and discussions that we did about. So the main question here is intersectionality and why the only way to oppose oppression is to oppose all oppression at the same time. If you participate in one form of oppression while supposedly opposing another form of oppression, then I think you're not opposing any form of oppression.
No, I understand. I hear you, and I know that this broad, very it's a spiritual Zen-like place.
No. It's a very pragmatic.
It's also
political position.
Yes, of course.
It's also spiritual, but it's also a materialistic, pragmatic view of politics. This is not me living in the clouds.
No, I'm not saying that.
The most pragmatic that I can be.
I'm not saying that. I'm not discarding that at all, Alon. Not at all. But that was really more of a, in order to understand it, I think, for me, I'm not saying I have a problem understanding it because I understand it. But I mean, in order for, when you talk about intersectionality, I mean, you have a brain that can figure out the most dramatic mathematical formulas, okay? And so it might be a little easier for you to come.
No, I don't think that's. I don't think
come
that's
to
it.
certain conclusions. But
I don't think that's it. I think that my position is so simple that it can be put on a bumper sticker. Okay, my position is. My position is. I oppose all forms of oppression.
I hear you.
That's it. And the complications happen from the other side, not from my side. Okay. So, for example, people can say I oppose all oppression, but then they put an asterisk on it, and the asterisk is that it's limited to a certain group only. So, for example, Zionists can say I oppose all oppression. I'm for justice for everyone, with a small asterisk, and the small asterisk is Palestinians. And humanists can say, I oppose all oppression, I support liberation and justice for everyone, but the asterisk is that this everyone is includes only animals of the type Homo sapiens, only humans, okay? I don't put any asterisks. This is the only difference between me and other people who oppose oppression. I removed all the asterisks, and you can too. Anyone listening to this conversation can remove all asterisks from their opposition to oppression. Anyone listening is opposed to oppression in some sense, and anyone listening can remove all the asterisks. Just look and see if you have any asterisks in your declaration that you oppose all oppression, and then remove it. It's very, very simple. You don't have to be intelligent. You don't have to be sophisticated. You only have to look simply at reality and do what's necessary.
That's true, but one also has to have the capacity to take one problem at a time. I think some people may view it that way.
I think that they are wrong. I think it's super easy. It's super easy to be against oppression. Okay, it's you don't have to be you don't have to do anything active. You just have to stop actively participating in oppression. You have to stop doing stuff. It doesn't require energy to stop doing stuff. It requires energy to do stuff. To do oppression requires energy.
I will send an email to Glenn Greenwald and suggest you as a guest to his, because I mean he would absolutely. But then very quickly your voice and your Hebrew Canaanite podcast may be on the lookout from the supremacist forces, because he happens also to be a vegan,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to be on his show.
Yeah, and he's completely fearless, like you. So I'm gonna take this link and send it to him.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no, but
if you're listening, what's his name?
Glenn Greenwald.
Glenn, if you're listening, I would love to be on your show.
Yeah, he does. He does system update. I will definitely send the link to him because he would be a fantastic guest.
I appreciate
that. And he has a very, very wide audience, and he's fearless, completely fearless. Oh my God, we've covered a lot, but we've only scraped the surface.
That's the situation with every single conversation that I have.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, if you can, your plans for the immediate future with, maybe with Elik and what are you guys planning with?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good opportunity to tell some people about what I have been doing, what I will be doing. So, okay, let's start from basics. I have a YouTube channel called The Hebrew Canaanite. Look it up on YouTube. I have a podcast there with my friend Elik, and the podcast is called One State Solution, and we speak about Palestine and about what's going on in Palestine from an anti-Zionist perspective and an anarchist perspective as well. Elik also has a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is called Sound of Anarchy. And on that channel, we have another podcast called Yalla. And on that podcast, we have interviews with people, again, around this subject. For example, our conversation with Muhammad, who I mentioned before, who lives in Gaza. We had 2 conversations with him, maybe the most important thing that we did. And also conversations with anti-Zionist Jews, also conversations with Palestinians living in diaspora, and all kinds of conversations. We have a relatively new show. We started it a couple of months ago, and it's called Living the Cult. And this is also on Elik's channel. And on that show, we interview people who deprogrammed themselves from Zionism, but never spoke out publicly about this. And we give them an opportunity to step out of the anti-Zionist closet, so to speak, and to talk about their process of realizing what was going on and changing their opinions, and about how they deal with society that's, of course, punishing them for their change. And this is, I think, a very fascinating discussion, because it both shows how the Zionist cult operates, how the propaganda and indoctrination operates, and also it shows how you can liberate yourself from it and the difficulties in liberating yourself from it. Another thing that we started doing is a lot of live streams from certain events. Like, for example, we went to the liberal Zionist protest. This is part of the awakening that we were talking about, organized by Standing Together, the movement Standing Together, which is a liberal Zionist movement, okay? They organized the protest on the border with Gaza against the starvation. And we went there and we participated in this protest, but we also challenged it from within, okay? During the end of this live stream, you can see me shouting at liberal Zionists that they are actually supporting the genocide because they support Zionism. Okay, so go watch that. And another thing that we started doing is trying to go to the street and challenging people in Zionist society using Elik's music. Okay, and this led to a new project that this is Elik's project. I'm talking about it in his behalf, but I'm also involved, of course. This is a new documentary film which will document Elik's journey throughout occupied Palestine, where he uses his music to so he is a viola player, a very talented musician, and he has a lot of anti-Zionist and radical and revolutionary music, and that he wrote in the last couple of years. And he will use his musical talent to challenge Zionist society from within. And I think this is a very fascinating project. There is now a Kickstarter happening just as we speak. I don't know what the situation with this is, but maybe we can put the link to donate to the Kickstarter project, because I think that this can be a very important historical document that will show how fascism works, how societies become genocidal, how genocidal societies look, and how resistance against this genocide can look. And this is filmed and directed by our friend Sivan, who is also anti-Zionist like us. He was born into the cult, but he deprogrammed himself as well. And another new thing that has started happening is on my own channel, I started doing, it's a nameless show with my girlfriend, Tamar, and we talk a lot about these issues of intersectionality and how to oppose all oppression. So Tamar, when we met, she was a Zionist, okay? She called herself a Zionist, and I called myself anti-Zionist. This was around a little bit over 2 years ago. And now she is no longer a Zionist, because she went through the process before my eyes and with my help, and because of her openness and sincerity, okay? It was her doing. I only helped, okay? But she was open and sincere, and she really cares. She is, of course, vegan like I am, and the same kind of process that led her to being vegan led her to opposing Zionism as well. Okay, so we talked about these.
She was not a vegan when you met her.
No, she was a vegan. She became vegan around 8 years ago. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But so what I did was, whenever she would say a stupid liberal Zionist talking point, I would say to her, this is like carnists, people who participate in the Holocaust of non-human animals, saying this and this and this and this. And she was like, no, it's not like that, because blah, 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 blah. And then I would say, but it is like that. And sometimes I would say it not nicely, okay? Sometimes I would yell, I admit it, okay? But then she would think about it, and she would go like, oh, it is like that, okay? And then when October 7th happened, and she saw how deranged everyone around her became, she saw how everyone was supporting the genocide, she really started doubting, her Zionism much more deeply. And soon after, she was like, okay, I'm not part of this anymore. Okay. So we talk about this process. We want to oppose all systems of oppression. We want to dismantle all systems of oppression. And the way to do this is by each and every one of us liberating ourselves more and more and more. The more people look at themselves honestly, look at their own collaboration and enslavement to the systems of oppression, and the more people deprogram themselves and stop cooperating and collaborating with these systems of oppression, the better chance we have to dismantle those systems, or even I can say it even more clearly, the dismantlement of these systems is exactly the process that I described right now. So this is what we want to do. We want to talk about it, and the more we believe that the more we talk about it, because systems of oppression gain power from silence and repression. So the more we talk about it, the more we can dismantle those systems. And this is a new thing that we've been doing on my channel for the last 2 months, because Tamar was very shy. She didn't want to do it, but I kept telling her, do it for them, do it for them. And when I say for them, I mean for the non-human animals. And she was like, okay, at some point. And this is a very exciting development.
That's very, very good. Look, I have all the links to your podcasts already, but please send me, just send it to me exactly what you want us to put up. But on a final question, I just want to ask you, if I may, I remember you in your immediate family situation with your mom and dad and sisters, etc. Can I ask you how things are for you there now? Has things...
It's difficult, okay? One of the ways that systems of oppression keep their control, and one of the ways that they punish dissidents, is by the people close to them, like their family and friends, going against them, okay? And trying to silence them in all kinds of manipulative ways, Okay, and the situation is unpleasant. Okay, there was an experience about a month ago where I started talking during family dinner about how my my friend Muhammad is starving right now. This is what I said, and they silenced me. And this story I didn't tell on my channel yet, but come watch my channel. Tamar and I will talk about this story because Tamar was there, so we will tell this story of how silencing works inside the Zionist cult, how I wanted to talk about my personal friend starving and I was silenced by my own family. Okay, so this is a story that still needs to be told. Okay, so coming soon.
But okay, I guess the final question I wanted to also hear a little bit how you are doing. What is your status with Alon and your heart and your mind and your sense of...
So the answer to this question, how are you, is now super complicated for me. Okay, but the shortest way that I can honestly answer it is to look at different levels. Okay, so on the most immediate of levels, I'm fine. I have a house. I have a home to live in. I have food. I have I can watch TV. I can spend time with my girlfriend. I can do everything is okay materially. Okay, this is one level. On the other hand, on the emotional level, I look at the world around me and I see a lot of violence. I see a lot of oppression. I see a lot of death. I see a lot of suffering. I see a lot of stupidity. I see a lot of ignorance. I see a lot of hatred. I see a lot of negative things. And I think that the world at large is in a horrible situation. Okay? And this makes me very, very sad and depressed and pessimistic and angry. On another level, I feel like I'm, as opposed to what was the situation like until 2 years ago, I'm actually active in opposing all of these things, and this gives me a sense of hope and of strength, of power. Okay, because I'm doing stuff. Okay, maybe I will not succeed in toppling all the oppressive systems in the world in my lifetime, probably not, but I will know that I did my small part in this process that I think is the most important process in the world. Okay. On another level, this upsets me greatly because this takes all of my energy, and I cannot invest my energy into things that are more personal and creative. Like I will not be a mathematician. Okay, I just will not be a mathematician, which was my dream when I was younger. I cannot, just listen to music and forget about everything that's going on around me. I cannot enjoy my time on a wholesome level without feeling a twinge of like, this is me just removing myself from reality. Okay, so but also on a deep spiritual level, I feel good. I feel good because I feel like I'm more connected to my core. I'm more connected to what I truly believe in. I'm more connected to what I truly want. The horrible situation around me has also exposed my soul. My soul is, it has to okay, so what happened on October 7th? It exposed everyone, I think, everyone around the world. And in occupied Palestine, it exposed the Zionists who were, genocidal racists. And it also exposed those who are against this and who are powerful enough to go against it, even though their entire society tells them not to, silences them. And to me, this is a process of, like, it forced me to look within and to find the power within and to connect with my own values, connect with my own morality, connect with my own soul. And I feel that this is a good process that made me more sane, that made me a better person. Okay?
Well, I'm incredibly happy to see you thriving and hear these words from you. I'm very proud of you, and I'm very grateful that you wanted to come on again. And I salute you, Alon Cohen. You're a star. You're a star over the Canaan lands, undoubtedly. And so thank you so much for coming on Seriously again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation, and like it allowed me to say a lot of things that I didn't have the opportunity to say publicly. So thank you so much for having me.
I'm not the oppressor.
Exactly. You are helping me go against the oppression. So that I thank you for that greatly.
Thank you, Alon.